God so much for his many blessings and for the things that we have gone through that help us to make us who we are today. That's what we're going to talk about today. So let's bow our heads for a moment of prayer. Loving God, we are profoundly grateful to you for the blessings of life, for the opportunity we have this morning to worship together, to praise your name, and to be fed by you, to be blessed at your hand. So we ask that your Holy Spirit will just embrace each one of us, our various situations, and help us to see you more clearly, to love you more deeply, and to be more open to your leading in our lives for Christ's sake. Amen. The topic, your story, your life, I'd like for you to add to that your praise. Your story, your life, your praise. We love testimonies. I've been blessed by powerful testimonies from people, their life stories of their walk with God, God's miraculous intervention in their lives. I remember, I have memories of different times in my life when I was down and things weren't going so hot, and I go to church and somebody gives a testimony that just moved my spirit to a much better place, and I thank God for the testimonies of others. And I think that all of us here, and the fact that you have included in your program a time when people can give thanks for what the blessings God has given to them, to each one of you during the week, or since you were last on or whatever, shows that you have an appreciation for the power of a testimony. But somebody else's testimony is not your testimony. It's not my testimony. My story, my walk with God is what I have most intimately to testify about, and that you have most intimately to testify about. So this morning, I'd like for each of you to begin to think about your own life and how you have grown, how God has led you, how God has blessed you. And later on, before I close, I want to take about probably the last 10 minutes or so to give some of you an opportunity to share. You share all the time, and I know that you share all the time on here, but specifically, maybe some of you have shared before, or maybe some of you have never shared before because it's hidden in the recesses of your mind and have not come to public view. Something that has made a difference in your walk with God, some experience that has struck you in a way that when you are shaken, when things are difficult, when life becomes hard and deep calls so deep, you can recall that story, that experience, and say, God was with me then, he's with me now. And I'll share one or two of mine with you as we go along here, but I wanted to share with you the significance and the power of your story, your life. My past, I view as a stage, and life is a dance. I'm not a good dancer. When I try to dance with my wife, she complains that her foot suffers. But every now and then, when I'm alone at home, I put on some music, mostly religious music, and with myself and my God, I take over the living room and I dance. And it feels good. But I said, I view life as a dance, as a stage, and life, my past is a stage, and life is a dance. Just think of a dancer on a stage that is not comfortable with the structure of the stage. They are afraid that there are holes in it or things to stumble over. They cannot dance freely. If we are not reconciled with our past, we cannot move through life freely. I want to say it again. If we are not comfortable with our past, we cannot move through life freely. We will have things happening to us that we can't relate to well because of the way our brains are programmed. If I can, I don't want to get too scientific, but let me just say that the mind has a way of storing experiences that we have to help us deal with future challenges. So if you got bitten by a dog, your mind will store in it that dogs are dangerous, but oftentimes in a way that you think, if it's a traumatic experience, we think that all dogs are dangerous. So you'll be walking down the road and you see somebody come around a corner with a poodle, and you begin to turn to run because of how you're programmed to protect yourself. And so another part of the brain will help you in most instances to say, no, it's just a poodle. It's not the German Shepherd or the pit bull that bit you last year. So calm down. But that's how the mind works, because we're designed to protect ourselves. And the same mechanism in us that designed to protect our emotions and our feelings and our bodies also work against us, because the fear that those memories retain for us are often dangerous and difficult. And matter of fact, for some people, it defines them. And if you've ever had a chance to talk to anybody, well, chance is not the right word, the misfortune of talking to somebody, and all they can tell you is about the awful life they have had. My mother died when I was young, and my father married a woman, and she was just so awful. And the money my mother left to put me through school, they squandered it, and I grew up without education, and life is hard. And they're in their 50s or 60s, and life's still hard because that experience of their childhood has defined them. Their story is a sad story. And we need to look at our lives and look back at it and find some joy in it and ask God for the grace to turn the sad part of our stories into blessings and reasons eventually to be joyful. How do we do that? Well, I want to take you on a journey for a few minutes with some men who walked with Jesus. Some of them were fishermen. One was a tax collector. The other one, others were different things. They came for different reasons. But they lived in an era when their nation was oppressed by Romans. But there's also spiritual depravity that affected them, and there was sickness and difficulties all around, as we see in our age today. And here came a man that made a difference. From a supernatural catch of fish, they went on to see miracle after miracle after miracle, and they were convinced deep in their heart that this man was the Messiah. I imagine that for some, it was a dream come true. For all of them, a dream come true. I've hitched my bandwagon to something great. As a matter of fact, just ask yourself the question: what would cause you to leave your house, your spouse, if you're married, your parents, if and your friends, if you were not, and walk around behind an itinerant preacher for 3 years, 3.5 years? What caused you to do that? There's got to be something great happening. And there was something great happening. There were miracles. There were tremendous activities going on. The dead raised, the blind see. teachings that took them out of the Pharisaical nuance stuff that they just burdened down their lives and gave them a lightness and a freedom to move through. It's a tremendous experience for them. And then they're going to Jerusalem this third time with this anticipation that now when we get this time, when we get to Jerusalem, no more hiding, no more running, no more escaping the crowd. This triumphant entry as we go in, he is going to be king, and we're going to rule with him. And that garden that night, everything changed. Disaster struck. And the next day, there's a cross. John was a little braver, stayed a little nearer. I imagine the others were listening for news from afar, hiding, trembling, fearful for their own lives. Some maybe have been peeping from behind trees from a hillside far away, looking to see what was happening. We can capture a bit of the imagery of how they felt, because by Sunday morning, they were all huddled together in one space. We don't know if it's a room where they had the Last Supper or where it was, but they have found a place that could accommodate them, and they were there huddled. It was not just that someone had died that was close to them. It was not just 3 years of investment walking with Jesus that did not come to fruition, and that must have been devastating. Can you imagine having spent 3 years in an enterprise looking for some outcome, some positive outcome at some point, and nothing comes of it? But they had grown to love this man, to appreciate him, to hope not only for themselves, but for the nation. So this was not something just about them. It was something about the entire nation of Israel. And alas, how sad they were. I can imagine the emotions. The death of a closest friend, but also the one that they had hoped would be the deliverer of Israel. And watch the tide turn. Watch the tide turn that afternoon when Jesus appears with all of them in that room. They couldn't believe it. It was beyond their imagination. And he had to gently, as he did with the ones on the road to Emmaus earlier that day, he had to gently lead them through what he had to suffer. And said, touch me, feel me. Give me something to eat. Because spirits don't need to eat food, but humans eat. I am he. What an incredible change in their lives when Jesus revealed himself and gave them a different purpose, gave their lives a different meaning. And they went on to become not disciples anymore, but apostles, carrying the good news, except for Judas, of course. And I imagine they were saddened about his demise as he had walked with them all those years. But Jesus turned the tide. There is a tide that is turned in our lives when we allow Jesus, his resurrection power in us. It changes our story. The sad, painful scenes that haunted us become now just a memory of the past, of what we have been through. But our story become one of praise and thankfulness. Our lives become enlightened by the presence and the power of Almighty God through Jesus Christ. It is. Let me go back to what I started with before about how pain defines us and how our agonies can control our lives. Here's what happens when we embrace Jesus Christ. When we embrace Jesus Christ, we see people not as enemies, not as perpetuators of evil and wickedness in us, because there is no pain that comes to us as emotional pain. That is we heal from the cuts and bruises and the broken limbs, but healing from emotional pain, from things, awful things people have done to us, is hard, is challenging, is difficult. But when Jesus comes in, he heals our souls and heals our emotions. And the way he heals our emotions, he gives us a different perspective on the people in our lives who have caused us pain. We see them as sinners needing salvation rather than evil people and wicked people. We see them as people who were captives of their own pain. And since all they had in them was selfishness and pain, all they shared was their selfishness and pain. And we were victims of it. But now that Jesus has set us free, we don't see them as such anymore. We see them as sinners needing salvation. And we can adhere now to the command of Jesus to forgive them, to release them, to set them free, to let them go, to pray for them rather than hate them, to ask God to deliver them out of their misery, out of the captivity, to help them to face their own past and be healed, because now we are being healed by the Lord Jesus Christ. It gives a whole new perspective. And here is the power of this transformation that Jesus brings to us. The person who is reconciled and restored from the pain of the past and has now a new life tells life story in a different way. And they become healers, and they can tell now stories to people. The same story that was a burden. I have 2 minutes, and then I'd like some of you to tell a story here. I tell you two things. One, I was working at a hospital in San Bernardino, California, and we're opening a chemical dependency unit. And the leader came to us in administration and said, we're ready now to start training people to do counseling in this program. And I went to him afterwards and I said, I'd like to volunteer for this training because I'd like to participate in helping people who are addicts become whole. He said, no, you can't be trained. I said, what? Why? He said, what? An addict sits in front of him. What are you going to tell him? Read his Bible. He said, I read my Bible through once a year for the past 10 years. You tell him to pray. Say, I pray morning and evening. I still have this monkey on my back. So what are you going to tell him? I said, that's what I'm here for you to tell me. He said, no, I can't tell you that, because the only people we use as counselors are addicts themselves. Because if you sit in front of an addict and quote scripture and tell him all the different things, it means nothing to him. But if you can say to him, I too am an addict and I have been free and clean for the past 5 years, and I can show you how, he will begin to listen to you. I say, wow. So I learned from that the bad things that have happened to me in my life empowers me to now find people, and God brings them to me. And use those experiences as tools in my toolbox to minister them, because God has given me victory over them. He has lifted me above those pains. And he has now empowered me to use those very stories and that very experience, or those very experiences, to bless others and to lead them to healing. So for those who have lost a child, you're in a unique position to help somebody else who has lost a child if you have been healed from those wounds. If whatever it is you've been through, abuse, whatever form, when you have your story, your past, your history healed and restored by the presence and the power of Jesus Christ, you are risen to the place. Take time to look over your story, not just the bad things. I tell you one thing that quickly, and then I let a few of you share. Years ago, when I was a senior in college, Wisconsin College, I was a struggling student and would grab work. So we got, a group of us got a job to paint a new Cedar Hall, a new men's dormitory. And I'm up on the third floor and painting and moving along the scaffold, moving backwards, painting in spot and moving backwards. And I picked up the paint can and I put my foot back, and something inside of me said, stop. I froze in midair, in mid-movement. And I looked around, and my foot was suspended beyond the scaffolding over nothing. I had reached the end of the scaffolding and did not realize it. And God spoke to me that day before I shift my weight. And I said to myself, wow, God must have a purpose for my life. So whenever I am troubled, whenever things aren't going well, and I wonder what is going to happen to my life, experiences like that, I look back on and I say, God has a purpose for my life. He carried me through the difficulties and hardships of shortage of money and almost losing my life on that scaffolding to be here today because it has a purpose for my life. The people who have hope for the future are people who are joyful and praiseful because they are anticipating something wonderful from God. I'd like for a couple of people just say, share with me for a moment. Take a minute, take 2 minutes, and share something that God burdens and difficulties and just gives you hope that is in your life and is going to carry you through. Anybody want to share testimony? Okay, so let me share one more with you, and then I let you go. When I was in high school, I developed a condition called hives. Hives is a condition where your skin swell up like it's welts all over it, and you itch like crazy, like you're poisoned. And to cut a long story short, I wound up having to see a doctor. After 3 years, my mother insisted that I see somebody that fixed the problem rather than taking tranquilizers that was making me sleep in my grades going through the floor. And I got to the place where I was recommended to go see a psychiatrist. Now, as is today, worse back then, to go see a psychiatrist means that you're a madman. I told the doctor, I said, no, I'm not going. Because nobody's going to label me as a madman. I'm not a madman. I got on the evening and I prayed and I was talking to God and I said, God, look, these people sending me to go see psychiatrists for people label me as a madman. What kind of business is this? And he said, Patrick, how long have you been suffering with this thing? I said, 3 years. He said, how long have you been praying that long, right? He said, yes. He said, what is this? How I choose to heal you? I said, okay, God, I'll go. I won't describe the emotion that morning sitting in that waiting room at the Old Montego Bay Hospital, in this place where people would walk across the street and see me sitting to wait to see a psychiatrist. I turned my face the other way because I was so afraid of being seen. I finally got in to see the lady, and she was a fantastic analyst. I mean, she got to the root of it in a half an hour. And it turned out that I had a bad relationship with my father. And in that context, I had internalized what the dreams I had for what my father should be to me had taken over my brain so much that it created bad chemistry. And that bad chemistry was exhibiting itself in my body in the form of hives. She changed my medication, and I went home. I used to have nightmares if I didn't take the medication. And if when I had a nightmare, when I woke up, if I didn't take the pill, I get a sequel to that nightmare. So I asked God, I said, God, help me here. I went back the second time and she said to me, I asked her, are these pills going to cure you? She said, no. What do you do for me then? They slow down your brain because your brain is in hyper mode. You're just thinking so much about the relationship you want to have with your father, and it's not there. And he said, it slows it down so you can think rationally about your world. He said, so how am I going to get well? She said, you have to accept the fact that you can't change your father. You can only change your attitude towards him. You have to love him as he is. In our first interview, you said that you were a praying man. Now is the time to lean on that faith. And I prayed. The night I decided to fast and pray one day, and the day came, and it was just, I was a ferocious eater, and there was just too much food in the house that day, and I ate all day. And the night I fell on my knees, and I said, God, I didn't fast, but I still need a miracle. And I prayed that night, and that night I prayed, and I fell asleep on my knees, and I did not have the nightmare, and I did not take the pill. And I have not taken a pill for hives since then. And thank God, I'm free. But what has happened out of it is, I'm able to sit with young people who are having difficulty with their parents. Are you putting it together? I'm able to sit with young people who are having difficulty with their parents and talk them through it, because that's my experience forced me to be more interested in psychology and understanding what happens in the human mind when they are neglected, when they are traumatized, and to help others. Turn your pain into a tool and let your life be one of praise to your God who turns it around. I think my time is over. Is there one person who wants to share an experience? Okay. Let me turn over.
I could share my experience. Oh, is there somebody else? Okay, they can
No, go ahead, Sister Dunbar. That's fine.
Okay. Thank you so much, I have to say, for this beautiful presentation. I mean, I've been in tears from the beginning of your presentation Brother Pac to now. And so I don't even know if I can possibly tell you my testimony without breaking down, but I'll do it. It's something happened to me about maybe 6 years ago, but it has impacted me, as you have mentioned, how much it changed my life completely out of a mess that I put myself into in disobeying. In taking on my own life and my own thoughts without allowing God to lead and direct. And it happened in my job where it affected my Sabbath. I've never had a problem with Sabbath in my workplace, and I thank God for that. But this one particular situation, I relented and I gave into my weakness. It was a situation where the group of us executives in the business that I'm in, we go to this very important conference every year where we meet partners and travel partners and different kinds of high-end professionals that we partner with, create new relationships that take us into, of course, production and growth. And it's a very important. And so that particular date fell where we had to travel on a Sabbath. And in those times, it was Air Jamaica that was flying. And Butch Stewart, who was then the owner, called around to the industry and said, okay, I'm putting on a flight free, with just taxes. We were going to Puerto Rico. And so I had already made arrangements for us to travel on a scheduled air. And we would have gotten there. Of course, the price was much more expensive. My boss called me and said, okay, there's a chartered flight. Just cancel all the reservations and we'll go on the charter flight. Now, I realized, no, it's the Sabbath and Carol isn't going to do that. But I didn't. I went ahead and I canceled all the flights and, changed it to the chartered flight. And it bothered me. And I was really upset with myself that I had not trusted God, that he would come through for me. And then I fought with it internally and I prayed about it and I said, okay, I've just got to let God take care of this. And so I changed my flight. I rebooked my scheduled flight, and now the cost is $200, much more than it was originally. And then I was in more perplexed because how could I explain that expense report where I am paying much more than even the owner of the hotel is going to pay less on a chartered flight. And I was just in a really uncomfortable situation with my God. And so I prayed, and then I relented, and then I changed my flight again, and then I rebooked the chartered flight, and then I was fighting against, and then I moved my flight again back to the scheduled flight, and now it's much more expensive. And I'm like, this is it, God. I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble with you, and I'm in trouble with my job. I said, why have I allowed this to happen to me? And I was really frustrated, sleepless nights that I let God down. And I just prayed and prayed about it. And I was getting up, and I now then, the day before, realized that I couldn't even change my flight again now because now everything was full. And so I was getting dressed and praying with God and talking with him. And I said, God, I'm in a complete mess. And I ask for your forgiveness. Can you please fix it? And I think the only way you can fix it is to just cancel the charter flight. This was the kind of conversation I was having with God. And so that very day, I was in a meeting and the phone rang, and in the middle of the meeting, they said, this is for you. I answered the phone. Just let you know, the charter flight is canceled. Carol, can you please book us all on a scheduled flight right away? Flights are being filled up. Everybody's going. I was froze. Tears bubbled up in my eyes, and I realized how God loved me so much. Even in my mess, even in my unfortunate lack of trust in him, he answered me and he corrected and fixed the mess to the point where now my ticket was less expensive than everybody else. God is just, and he has changed my life because of that. Now I totally blindly walk into his presence and walk behind him because I know even when I mess up, he's going to be there for me.
Amen.
Amen.